You know, I got to tell you, where Ben's expertise is the Beatles, mine is the E Street Band, so we've got you covered.
All right, go to it.
All right. So out of all the projects you could pursue, why Macca To Mecca?
That's not every day you get a chance to play some Beatles songs. I haven't done it since I was a bar band in high school. We started the tour the day after I filmed The Irishman with Marty Scorsese. Got to London and the very first gig, Paul McCartney joined us on stage, which was probably the top 5 biggest thrills of my life. He had come on stage with us with the E Street Band at Hyde Park, and he invited me and Bruce on stage with him at Madison Square Garden. But coming on my stage, endorsing my music and my show was really quite an unbelievable, thrill. So it kind of put me in a Beatle mood for the rest of that tour. That was the first gig of the tour, and we were playing England, and we're about to play Liverpool. And I thought, let's have some fun. I remember the Beatles used to do these things called lunchtime sets at the Cavern when they first started. And then literally the local businesses, would bring their lunch to the Cavern, and the Beatles would play for half an hour. So I said, let's do one of those lunchtime sets. And at the Cavern, and we're playing Liverpool that night anyway. So we did. That's what we did. And we decided to do like half the set with songs that were Beatles songs with horns, since we had the horns, and half the set of covers that they would have done at the Cavern at that time, So that was part of that whole Soulfire tour, and we just recently attached that now to the Soulfire box set. But for those who already have the Soulfire live DVD box set, we also have it separate, for people who can, they can just get the Macca To Mecca package. So that's the story, man.
Well, there's a couple of things here. One, if playing with McCartney is one of your top 5, I'd love to know the other 4.
Well, filming with Scorsese is right there too, which was the night before.
Good point. But you talk about playing on stage with Paul. Let's go back to 2012. Hard Rock Calling. You're on stage with the E Street Band. Bruce calls out Paul McCartney. You're in the middle of I Saw Her Standing There, and the electricity goes out. They pull the plug because you're past curfew.
Yeah, like literally 5 or 10 minutes past curfew, and they pulled the plug on us, and and I joke about it on this DVD,
What was that conversation like between you, Paul, and Bruce backstage after that happened? I mean, because as fans couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we actually went to dinner afterwards, and we were just laughing about it, I mean, it just shows you, just in case you start thinking like you're important, it's a very humbling experience. Paul McCartney meets Bruce Springsteen, and they pull the plug.
I remember that almost went viral on our Facebook Beatles group. That people just the amount of comments that how disrespectful. What the hell's going on? Like, this is really important, and it's almost like the rooftop gig. When the cops try to pull it on the Beatles.
Yeah,
is it happening again?
I mean, and that was at the height of their powers.
Yeah, I mean, where was Mal Evans, man? Mal Evans should have been there with you guys, stopping the cops. On.
Rock and roll never gets any respect, let's face it, right?
Makes for a good story, though. Makes for a good comeback for you guys to reunite and all that.
So, Stevie, 5 years later now, 2017, how does this happen? How does McCartney get on stage with you at a small club in England?
I heard he was coming, and so right at the end of the sound check, they were really bugging me to let everybody in, because it was one of our bigger gigs of that tour, and it was sold out. And so I said, we better prepare something just in case, So at the very last minute, I did I knew Paul's a fan of Little Richard. as I am. And in fact, if it wasn't for Paul McCartney and the Beatles, I wouldn't know who Little Richard even was. The British invasion in general turned us teenagers onto our own American music, as you know. But anyway, the last couple of minutes, I did like a Little Richard arrangement. I saw her standing there. We ran through it once, and then when Paul got there, I said to him, I said, "Listen, man, you never socialize these days. You're so busy touring all the time. Sort of on this forever permanent tour, which is wonderful. And he's doing like 3-hour shows now.
Yeah, totally.
And
amazing
so I said,
what he's doing.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I just said, just relax with, Nancy, your wife, and relax with Maureen, my wife, and just enjoy the show. Don't even think about coming up, any kind of pressure, So I think he appreciated that, and we do the show, and we're taking a bow for the encore, and my roadie runs up and says, "Paul's coming up."
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. And he comes up with a guitar on, and without ever having rehearsed it, he had a lot of faith in us, and I it's quite amazing. And we went into it and did it, and I threw him the first solo, and he played a great solo, and Mark Ribler, my other guitar player, played the other solo, and that was it, man.
Yeah, no, like what's really remarkable about that, when I was watching it, I mean, we as Beatle fans, we see a lot of these Paul live broadcasts, and what was remarkable for me was just how loose and relaxed Paul was with you and your band. It was kind of like he was really opened up and just relaxed and just really got into it. It's
yeah, I think that the show, oops, that's my dog. My dog wants to go out. Hang on, don't move.
Yeah, all good.
I think the show really, he really liked the show a lot, obviously, and he obviously liked the band a lot. I mean, he was asking Maureen questions throughout the set, what's that one? What's this one? He just was extremely, extremely into the show. And I think that's probably what motivated him to want to come up, because again, we never rehearsed it. He'd never seen the band before. I don't know if he had any idea what I actually do, other than, he knew me from the E Street Band, obviously, but I didn't know how familiar he was with my own music, So it's quite a vote of confidence and a very big validation for me, and what an endorsement, I just was I was amazed that he had it took a lot of courage, and I mean, the place was packed, 3,000-4,000, I don't know how many people, in the roundhouse,
He just dropped right in there, like you guys were playing. He just dropped straight in there, like it was like, But credit to you guys. I mean, you got a great band. I was watching your backup singers and your keyboard players and your brass guys. I mean, you guys were rocking, and you chose very jumpy numbers too. The type of numbers that gets people really into it, especially in the Cavern, and very adventurous Beatles songs too. Were those Beatles songs that you chose for the Cavern in particular? Did you choose them because no one had really done those types of, what was it? Was it Dr. Robert? Oh no, Good Morning. You did Good Morning.
Well,
and the time changes in that track are quite complex.
Well, it's funny, you can listen to a record your whole life, and you think you know it. You don't really know it till you play it,
Yeah.
And that's always been true with Beatles songs in particular. They're much more complicated than they sound. They make them sound very simple. I've always said the first 10 seconds of the song "Help" is the most sophisticated, complicated 10 seconds in all of rock music. But it sounds smooth as silk when they do it.
Yeah.
Try playing that first 10 seconds of "Help" with your band and try to make it sound like that. Okay, I mean, and George Harrison plays that crazy riff. But in this case, we had the horns, so we figured let's do half the set with Beatles songs with horns. Now it's not all that many, but
I've got to get you into my life, and
yeah, I know it was
Yeah, true.
All you need is love, which is quite tricky.
You had all the
Good
synth
morning.
parts down on the All You Need Is Love. All the synth guy had all of the string parts down,
Yep.
and that was very
Yep.
impressive.
And he had the animals in Good Morning.
Yeah,
The
that
rooster.
was one of the questions we had on the Beatles page was the rooster. They were like, "Are they murdering a real rooster? Or where is that coming from? Is someone squeezing a rooster in the back of the cavern?" Like, it's probably a keyboard sound, but yeah, good on them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
went
you got
right down
to
to the
have that
detail.
rooster. You can't start that song without the rooster. You got to have
True.
it. And then what was the other one? We did that Magical Mystery Tour, which,
Yeah.
listen to that horn part on that bridge. That really fast horn part is quite tricky. That was the idea. Just half the set with horns, since we had the horns.
Yeah.
And people never hear the Beatles songs with horns because where are you going to hear them?
I think what's perhaps
so refreshing about it.
Yeah, and what's ultra impressive is the size of the Cavern Club, and then knowing the size of the Disciples of Soul. I mean, it's difficult to cram everybody in there.
Well, let me tell you, when I first got to England in the 70s, I immediately ran to Liverpool, went to the address of the Cavern, and it was a parking lot. Okay, and in their wisdom, somebody thought, well, maybe there's something to this place after all. Again, rock and roll getting no respect at all. One of our most sacred sites was paved over, so they rebuilt it, supposedly very close to where it was, and supposedly with the same bricks. Who knows? But when they rebuilt it, they built a copy of what it was, that long, thin, room with the arches that we've all seen in the Some Other Guy video the Beatles did. But then they have a hallway going to a bigger room, and that's where Paul McCartney played when he played the Cavern, and that's where most bands play. And they assumed that, of course, with my band, the size of my band, they assumed that we wanted to play there also. I said, no, I gotta have the arches, man. I gotta have that. That's what I grew up with. So we barely fit the rhythm section on the actual stage with the arches, and then it's like a partition, and the girls and the horns were on the other side of the partition. You can see it in the DVD.
Could you see them? Could you actually see them when you were performing?
No.
Could you see them?
Not at all. No. But there's a little hole in the partition where Eddie Mannion, the leader of the horns, could see Richie, the drummer, so they could end more or less together. You wanted to get it close, but no, we couldn't see them at all.
Talk about intuitive live playing. You can't even see the guys you're playing with, but yet you wouldn't know it when you're hearing it.
No, it came off good, and we only rehearsed them that couple of days before.
Wow.
We're in a bus touring around England and just rehearsed them right on the bus.
Your selection of these Beatles tracks, I mean, some of them are covers in itself. They're rather obscure. What made you choose these songs?
Well, I mean, I know what most people don't realize is, again, the Beatles and the British invasion introduced us American teenagers to our own music. But it wasn't just the big guys. I mean, I'd never heard of Chuck Berry. I never heard of Bo Diddley. I never heard of Little Richard, So they introduced us to the main pioneers, but they also introduced us to some of the, obscure guys, like Larry Williams, which we did, slow down. Arthur Alexander, nobody ever heard of Arthur Alexander, And interestingly, Larry Williams and Arthur Alexander are two of the 5 artists that both the Beatles and Stones covered. It's only 5, and they're 2 of them. So it's just some of my favorite stuff. I mean, Larry Williams is incredible. He was sort of a replacement for Little Richard, actually, at Specialty Records, and Arthur Alexander, just a very soulful cat, And what else did we do? We did Boys, which was the B side of a Shirelles record that the Beatles had found. That wasn't a hit in America.
And that was a Ringo track, right? Ben?
That was Ringo. Yeah, Ringo actually had done it back with Rory Storm. He had always had a little featured role in the set of the Rory Storm and the Hurricane set. They called it Star Time, and Ringo would sing a couple songs, and that was one of them, which is why he was so comfortable with it. You know, when he did the Quiet You.
Coming back in.
You know, if you listen to it, it's probably Ringo's greatest vocal on a Beatles record. I think because he had been singing it for years, you know, with Rory Storm before the Beatles.
Yeah, he kind of lets it loose. He built it out, doesn't he? On
it's just great, and that great drum part, which he doesn't do anymore. And I tried to get him to do it last time I saw him. I said, Ringo, how can you not play that drum part? He's, you know, I don't know. I think he may have trouble playing it and singing it, but he did it for years. You know, he has that's a great pop pop boom. You know that fantastic drum part. Anyway, that was the other one, and then we had to do Some Other Guy, of course, which was originally again not a hit in America, by Richie Barrett, who was a legendary guy. He played piano on the Chantels. He produced the Chantels, the very first girl group hit record. And we actually had him on the Juke second album playing piano on that doo-wop song we did on This Time It's For Real, a song called First Night. And he wrote that, Richie Barrett wrote that with Lieber and Stoller, actually, the two greatest American songwriters. So it was, you know, we picked those just favorites, really. No particular, you know, reason other than I knew that you know, we looked and made sure they played them at the Cavern. They have, you know,
yeah, you got to play Some Other Guy in there. You know, that footage of the Beatles, you know, with Brian Epstein watching and they're going at Some Other Guy, and they really, I mean, such a good quality, even though it's not a good quality recording, it still comes, like the energy in Some Other Guy still comes across, and you can see them bopping up and down. And, you know, when you, as Beatles fans, like we look at that footage and we kind of see the black and white, and you've got that olden day sort of Beatles early sound, which I love. But it was nice to sort of have a little bit of that and also have some of these more obscure, you know, tracks from Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour. Which one do you lean? Are you Sgt. Pepper's guy or Magical Mystery Tour, or like?
You know, my favorite changes every hour. You know, the American version of Magical Mystery Tour was a little bit of cheating because it was really kind of a compilation, half of a compilation, rather than a proper album. You know, and in that compilation was Strawberry Fields and I Am the Walrus, you know.
So Stevie, when you were younger growing up, you weren't introduced to the Parlophone copies. You were introduced to the American copies.
Yeah, it was American copies our whole way. We never heard the originals till much later. My last, I don't know, 5 conversations with Neil Aspinall, who's just a wonderful, wonderful guy who ran Apple. My last 5 conversations with him was trying to talk him into releasing the mono versions, which they were not available. The actual mono versions of the Beatle records were not available until fairly recently, and they're the real thing. You know, we had, you know, not only did the Beatles not mix the stereo versions, George Martin didn't mix the stereo versions. The assistant engineer mixed the stereo versions. Okay, I mean they'd all left the studio and then left it to the assistant engineer to mix the stereo version, which was considered a gimmick. You know, stereo was considered a gimmick, and that's the only thing that was available to Americans for you know 30, whatever, 40, 50 years. I mean, ridiculous, right? And also the American versions, interestingly, have a very subtle touch of echo on them, all of them, you know? So a lot of people grew up with that and never really adapted to the mono versions, the real thing. They prefer the American versions because that's what they you know grew up with.
That's what they used to hear.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, Stevie, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Oh, that's, you know, that's it. That's the story. You know, we attached it to the soul. Now, you know, when you get the the Soulfire Live DVD now. It's attached to that. We attached it to the package, the big package. But for those who already had the Soulfire Live DVD, we also have it separate, as a Macca To Mecca separate thing,
I had Stevie, I had spoken to you back in LA when Bruce took a break, E Street Band took a break, and you had just now decided to release Soulfire and go out on tour with Disciples of Soul. And you were saying that you were kind of like rediscovering this again. Like, even though you had been in the music business for decades, it was kind of nerve-wracking to you. What's it like years later now, still touring with Disciples of Soul and being a frontman?
Well, it was quite a transition for me. I mean, I did 5 solo albums in the 80s, and then I said what I wanted to say. I learned what I wanted to learn. They were all very thematic, very political records back then. And, and I walked away in 1989, intending never to go back. I just kind of felt like I'd done that. Yeah, go ahead. And then I started acting and did Sopranos and then Lilyhammer after that. And I don't know, 20 years went by. Bruce put the band back together, the E Street Band back together, which I'd been gone. I took a mere 18-year hiatus from.
You left during the Born in the USA tour.
Yeah. I produced it and then didn't tour. And then suddenly, because of circumstance, I didn't even intend to come back into the business. But Bruce was doing the Broadway thing. I didn't have a new TV show. And somebody in London asked me to throw a band together and headline one of the nights at his blues festival. This crazy promoter named Leo Green, who you may know. And I thought, well, geez, I haven't done that in 25, 30 years, but it sounded like fun. And I just met a whole bunch of new musicians from producing the Darlene Love album, introducing Darlene Love. So I borrowed Mark Ribler, her music director. I said, throw together a band for me and let's go have some fun. I mean, let's bring some horns. We can do some Paul Butterfield blues band stuff with the horns that no one's ever heard. We can do some Electric Flag stuff with the horns that no one's ever heard. And I'll throw a couple of my old songs in. And we started rehearsing some of my old songs, which I hadn't played in literally 30 years. And I was quite taken with them, actually. I was like, wow, this stuff it's strange. They hold up very well. And they were never really categorizable. They were never really fashionable. So they kind of had a timeless quality to them. This rock meets soul thing that I had created, with the Jukes, Southside Johnny Asbury Jukes, and then carried that on into my first solo album. I said, let's go back to that for a minute and revisit it. And just, found a sponsor out of nowhere and we did the Soulfire tour. And it was just a lot of fun. I wasn't ready to write a whole new album. So we just did an album of songs I'd written for other people. That's what Soulfire is. It's mostly all songs I'd written for other people. And then halfway through the Soulfire tour, new ideas started coming to me, and that turned into the Summer of Sorcery album, which is all new stuff. And that live DVD will be coming out in June, actually. And that really turned out amazingly well as well. So it was literally being reintroduced to my life's work, which I'd kind of abandoned. Without really being conscious, I'd abandoned it, but I had. And it was nice to get back to it and find it, and then reintroduce it to the public a bit, as much as we could in those last 3 years. But it's been the most productive 3 years of my life, honestly, right up until the pandemic. I mean, we've got 5 album packages out, including the score from Lilyhammer, which had never really come out. The 2 live packages, Macca To Mecca, Rock and Roll Rebel, which is all my old masters remastered, and 3 concert DVDs in that Rock and Roll Rebel package. So, I mean, my entire past has now come out finally after being buried for decades, So that was really worthwhile. It was worthwhile. And again, this happened completely by accident, you know.
You know, now when we come back from this pandemic, is the plan now to go back on tour with E Street, or?
Well, yeah, we're talking about it. We luckily got that album done just before the quarantine hit, and we're really quite proud of it. You know, we did it the old school way, which we hadn't done since Born in the USA. You know,
You're talking Letter to You.
Yeah, Letter to You. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know, for those records, you know, Darkness and The River and Born in the USA, you know, Bruce would walk in with an acoustic guitar and then we, you know, and show us the song, and then we take it from there, you know. I mean, the E Street Band pretty much produces themselves individually anyway. And, you know, in this way we were able to give input on the arrangements, just like we did, you know, back then. Which was, you know, again, the first time we'd done that in whatever, 40 years, you know. And it really made a difference. It makes a difference, not just in how it ends up, but also the process. You know, the process is so much fun. You know, we booked 5 days to do it, and we finished it in 4. So the 5th day, we just sat around listening to it, drinking tequila. And it was, you know, we were doing what I call the Beatles schedule, which was a song every 3 hours, you know.
Wow.
And you know, we literally did the whole album in 4 days.
That's awesome. Well, Stevie, I really appreciate your time today. Ben does as well.
Yeah.
Great talking with you. Don't forget, Little Steven, Disciples of Soul, tribute to the Beatles, Macca To Mecca, available now. Little Stevie, thank you.
Good to see
Thanks,
you.
Stevie.